Good evening and welcome back after a very long hiatus to Unlocking Lore Live. This is the storytelling podcast. No, sorry, not storytelling podcast. This is storytelling live stream where we delve deep into the lore, the original stories of our classic tales, both known and unknown. I am your host, Maria, and I am so glad to be back. It has been a very, very long time since I have done a storytelling presentation. It was back in August when I was doing it during the summertime. And it's really, really great to be back here. And let's see who is in the chat. We have Duna Dan. Thank you so much. Always a supporting person. No, to this live stream. Thank you so much. Miss Martin Muses! She has been recently to a storytelling presentation herself live, a real in person, which was so cool. And I really hope you had a great experience with that. I will be presenting live as well very, very soon, but I'll get to that a little bit later. Who is here also? Dreaming Tabitha. Guys, go check out her channel as well. Both Miss Martin Muses and Dreaming Tabitha have great content, both their own original styles. It's amazing to be a part of this community together. I did a collaboration with Dreaming Tabitha, and here is the last thing that we did. Remember, it was the lizard lady. She later on did something really, really awesome. So go check her out. And Miss Martin Muses, I was a guest on her stream talking about about storytelling. So we have Sam all the way from Dubai. I hope you're not, I hope you are sleeping, my good man. But thank you so much for coming. You will enjoy this. It'll be worthwhile that you have stayed up or gotten up in the morning. So we have Bone. So long. It's been a very, very long time. I can see that this is actually a really good moment because I have been having a conflicting, in schedules. And yes, I have been getting a little bit over a cold that I had, which is why I did not have it in my usual, schedule, which is Thursday evenings. But then again, you do have so much during the weekdays. You have Tom's 90 stream, and then you have Dreaming Tabitha, and it's amazing, like so much content out there that I thought, when is a good time to be able to stream and get a lot of amazing people here to listen to this amazing stories that I have, and I thought Sunday in the afternoons, it's nice, it's getting dark, I think it's a good time. Wow, thank you so much, Jacob in Iron Inside. I hope this is not your first time. If it is, you are very welcome to Unlocking Lore Live, in which we talk story. We tell stories, and then we interact a little bit, talking about these stories. We have Brother Rudlock. I hope I pronounced it well, Redlock. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoy this presentation of the real story of Snow White. Because yes, everybody has been, talking about it. As we know, it's been the hot topic of like the recent weeks with the new, live action, Disney live action. That's we don't know now if it's actually going to come out or not. They postponed it for the next year, and then we have the Daily Wire's version of the story with Brett Cooper as Snow White, which is also, we don't know what's going to happen. There are different sets. People are for it, people are against it. And I thought, this is a great time to let you guys know what the real story is about. And I did do a disclaimer. Viewer discretion is advised, because this story is probably one of the darkest stories that I have read. That afterwards, boom, Disney, which it's very, very, it's fine to do this. Disney, what he did was he collected this story from the Brothers Grimm, and it does have its variants, because it does have very different people who have translated it from German to English and to other tales. And there are variant story of the tale itself with different names on it. And what he did was he collected that story, he sugarcoated it, he changed it, he made it family friendly, and then he presented it to the world as the first full-length animated feature, which obviously gave him, the rise. Well, that was the rise of Disney, the Disney empire. It was based on that, and again, this is fine, because he never claimed it as the Brothers Grimm. He claimed it on his own. He changed it, and that is what you do when you and it was public domain. So that's all. That's what it is. So yes, and then we have Nicole Marie. Thank you so much for coming. I'm gonna, get a little bit ready. I hope you guys are ready. Yes. And we have a request. I like to request Maria to tell the real story of Santa Claus. That could be very interesting. I haven't really never heard of a real story of Santa Claus, but I do my investigations, which I have done for this story here. So yes, I will put it on my list. Absolutely. So we have, and here we say, I've been looking forward to this episode. I have my own Brothers Grimm book. It's true. Now, I have to tell you that there have been versions of the Brothers Grimm by itself. I will be doing the 1857 version because the first version of children's tales and household tales of the Brothers Grimm was recopulated, or I think it was published in 1812, and there has been variations to the story of Snow White after that. So I will get into that after the story because I think it's it's worthwhile to discuss a little bit in depth about the story itself. So yes, it would be Saint Nicholas, right? So and here Sam says, I know it's a grim tale, but I did not know there were people snacking. Yes, this is why I did do a viewer discretion. So yeah, there is historical legends around real Santa. It's true, as well as Saint Valentine. There are historical facts around Saint Valentine, and there should be historical facts about Saint Nicholas. So yes, I will start doing my investigations about this story, and I will get it to you. Tabitha. And finally, just before we start, I've never heard the real version of Snow White. It's true. So there are a lot of tales out there that we grew up as a 90s kids, and we do have the Disney Renaissance, and very, very proud of having the Disney Renaissance. You have the Little Mermaid, you have Beauty and the Beast. Before that, it was Sleeping Beauty. You had the tales of Robin Hood. We all grew up on that. So it's true that we do not have the real stories of the real versions, which actually they can get a little bit gruesome, and they can get very, very, very sad. The one that I'm thinking of is The Little Mermaid, which recently, as we know, the Halle Berry version, it struck up, a division between people, and it's like, well, I mean, what can we do? I think the best thing is that we go back to, to the source, the original tales, the Hans Christian Andersen tale of The Little Mermaid. It's not exactly something very pretty. It does have a very, very nice happy ending. And this tale, well, I'll leave it to you to decide whether or not it is a happy tale, it is a happy ending, because, well, you never know. I'll leave it to you. So I guess we are ready. Without further ado, today, the presentation of the real story of Snow White.
In a world where legends come back to life and magic is in the air, we gather around to listen and delve deep into the lore. This is Unlocking Lore.
Once, very long ago, in a castle there lived a queen who would love to sit by her sill and embroider things. And one day this queen was sitting on the ledge, and her sill was as black as ebony, and it was snowing outside. And while she was embroidering, she pricked her finger with a needle, and 3 drops of blood fell from her finger onto the snow. The queen, although she felt that pain of prick, looked at the snow that was now red and thought, how I wish I had a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as ebony. And not long after, she did have a child. And at birth, she gave birth to a daughter. And her wish was complete. This daughter was so beautiful. She was white as snow, her hair black as ebony, and her lips red as blood. Unfortunately, soon after the childbirth, the queen died. And a year later, the king remarried again. And the new wife, the new queen, well, she was beautiful beyond compare. But that beauty was only outside, for she wanted to be the most beautiful queen of all the land. And what the king didn't know is she was also handy in witchcraft. And she had a mirror on the wall. Oh, we know that part. Mirror, mirror. Yes. And she would go every day to the mirror and she said, looking glass on the wall, tell me, who is the fairest of us all? And the mirror would say, why, you, my queen, are fairest of all. And the queen was content, for the mirror would not say a lie. And so the years passed on, and little Snow White started to grow. And at the age of 7, she was as beautiful of a princess and as beautiful as a child could ever be. Her face, her skin was as white as snow, her lips as red as blood, and her hair as black as ebony. Now the queen, the stepmother, didn't really care for Snow White. She didn't even acknowledge her existence. She would go still to her mirror. In a few days, she would ask, looking mirror, looking glass upon the wall, tell me, who is the fairest of us all? But one day, the mirror said, my queen, it is fair. You are fair, it is true. But Snow White, even at her young age, is 1,000 times more fairer than you. When the queen heard that, her pride and her envy grew, for she was to be the most beautiful. And then she looked for Snow White and saw that the child was indeed so beautiful, much, much beautiful than her. And envy and jealousy grew until finally, as the days passed and she saw how the child was beautiful, her jealousy grew to an extent that she wanted her dead. So one day, she asked the huntsman, come to me, take Snow White into the forest and kill her. I do not want to see her, but bring back her liver and her lungs. So the huntsman took the child into the forest. And when he was about to strike her, little Snow White turned around and with innocent eyes said, please do not kill me. Please. I will run away. I don't want to die. Please, I will go away, far away, and I will never return. And the huntsman, seeing how beautiful the child was and how innocent she was, decided to leave her, thinking, the wild beasts will devour you anyway. So he let her go and said, "Go, poor child, never come back." And so Snow White, knowing that it was her stepmother doing this, ran away into the forest. And the huntsman felt as if a big rock had been suddenly lifted from his heart when he let Snow White go. Chance that there was a young doe who came by, and the huntsman struck at her, took out the liver and the lungs, and brought it back to the queen. The queen immediately gave it to the cook and said, "Salt it and cook it." So the cook did, and brought back the dish, and the queen ate it, thinking that it was the end of Snow White. Snow White indeed ran into the forest, and it was dark and bleak. And she was very, very scared, but she dare not stop. And she ran and she ran and she ran. And even though the animals were there, they didn't do anything, she still was very, very frightened. Until finally, days later, she chanced to come by into, a cottage, a small cottage in deep, deep near the mountains. Snow White was terribly tired, and so she went, knocked on the door, and seeing that there was no one in, she went in. And inside the cottage she found it so neat, prim, and orderly, so clean. And inside there was a table, and on that table were 7 plates laid with 7 different dishes, and 7 mugs with wine, with 7 forks and 7 knives and 7 spoons and 7 chairs, all neatly placed. And to the side of the wall, she saw 7 beds, all lined up one after another. "Oh, who could possibly live here?" she thought. "I don't think they'll mind if I just rest a little bit." So inside she went. And after a few days of not eating, she was terribly hungry. So she started to eat a little bit of each plate and sip a little bit of wine out of each mug, hoping that she wouldn't eat everything, for she didn't want to finish the plates of each of them. And after she had her fill, she went and she wanted to sleep. So she went to the beds and started, testing them. And the first one, oh no, it was too hard. The second one was too long. The third one was too stiff. The fourth one was too short. And finally she tested until the 7th one, the last one, was just perfect. And so she laid down and soon fell fast asleep. Dusk came, and with it came the steps of 7 people. They went inside the house, and oh, it was 7 dwarfs. And the 7 dwarfs went inside and said, "Who has been in our house?" For they saw that not everything was as they had placed it. They went to the table, and the first one said, "Who used my fork?" The second one said, "Who ate my vegetables?" The third one said, "Who cut with my knife?" The fourth one said, "Who used my spoon?" The fifth one said, "Who sipped from my mug?" The sixth said, "Who ate my bread?" And the 7th one said, "Who ate from my plate?" And so they started looking around, and the first one went to his bed, and he saw that there was an imprint on it. "Who stepped on my bed?" And so all the 7 dwarfs came and saw that their beds were a little bit, rumply, until finally the 7th saw Snow White sleeping on his bed. And he said, "Goodness gracious! Who is this?" And all the 7 dwarfs came by and looked at Snow White. Who is this beautiful child? And they didn't want to wake her up. So they left her asleep, and the seventh dwarf, during the night, slept 1 hour in each of his companions' beds until the next day. When the sun rose, Snow White also woke up and saw that the 7 dwarfs were looking at her. She got frightened and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Who are you?" And the 7 dwarfs said, "Oh, who are you?" Snow White told them who she was and what happened and how her stepmother wanted to kill her. The 7 dwarfs were kind to her and said, Well, we like you. And if you don't mind, if you can keep house for us and cook for us and clean for us, we will work for you. We will let you live with us and we will take care of you and you will want for nothing." So she accepted. And so she started to live with them. She had her own little bed. And the 7 dwarfs, really, really got fond of her. And so the next day, when they set out, they said, "Mind you, the queen will know that you are alive. So open the door for no one, Snow White, while we are away." Snow White said that she would keep the door closed. And so off they went, for they went to the mountains to pick up ore and to dig up jewels. Snow White busied herself in the house. But far, far away in the castle, the wicked queen went up to her mirror. She thought that she finally had gotten rid of Snow White. So she confidently went and said, "Looking glass upon the wall, who is the fairest of us all?" And the looking glass said, "You, my queen, are fair, it is true, but far away in the house of the 7 dwarfs lives Snow White, who is 1,000 times more fair than you." The queen was shocked and later enraged, for the huntsman had deceived her, and she thought that she had seen the end of Snow White. So she decided to get rid of her. She could not live with her jealous heart, knowing that Snow White was even more beautiful than her and that she lived. So she decided to take matters into her own hands. She dressed herself as a peddler, and as she was crafted in witchcraft, she decided to get a lot of lace, put them in a basket, and go off and find Snow White and kill her herself. Snow White was in the house, keeping herself busy, when she heard a knock on the door. "Sell goodies! Goodies to sell? Oh, my good child, I have here goodies to sell. Wouldn't you like some?" Snow White peeked out and said, "Oh, why, it's a peddler woman. Oh, I'm sure there's no harm in that." And so she opened the door, said, "What goods do you sell?" "Oh, I have lovely goods. Look at these beautiful laces that I have here." And Snow White saw it. She saw, "Oh, wow, it is very beautiful." So after they struck a bargain, the peddler woman said, "Oh, but I shall lace it for you, my dear. That way you will finally be laced as you should." So Snow White turned around and allowed the peddler woman to lace her up, which she did. And she did it so tight that she could not breathe, and to a point that Snow White fell faint. And then she fell as if she were dead. The peddler woman laughed. "So much for your beauty." And so she left, running back as far and as fast as she could back to the castle. At night time, the dwarves came back and found Snow White as if she were dead, laying there. They looked around and said, "What happened?" And then finally noticed that the laces were so tight that of course she couldn't breathe. So with a knife they cut off the laces. And then little by little Snow White started to breathe until finally a few minutes later she was breathing normally and she woke up. She told the dwarves what happened exactly, and the dwarves said, "That was your stepmother. You should not open the door. We told you. She will know that you are alive." Snow White promised that she would not open the door again. And so the next day, the dwarves again warned her, "Remember, don't open the door for anybody." And Snow White promised that she wouldn't. Back at her castle, the queen, thinking that she had finally gotten rid of Snow White, went to her looking glass and said, "Looking glass upon the wall, who is the fairest of us all?" The looking glass said, "Queen, you are fair, 'tis true, but Snow White, over yonder in the house of the 7 dwarves, is 1,000 times more fair than you." The queen, angry and jealous, knew that the dwarves had saved Snow White, but she said, "I will give no rest. I will kill Snow White." So again, she painted herself and dressed herself as a different old woman, and she went into a place and she took out a comb and she laced it with poison. She put it inside a basket and off she went to find Snow White. Again, Snow White was alone. Again, she was busying herself with house chores, and she heard a cry from outside. "Goods to sell, my darling, goods to sell." But Snow White was weary. She said, "Go away! You cannot come here. I am forbidden to open the door." "Oh, my dear, but you don't have to open the door. Come and see what goods you sell." So Snow White peeked out of the window, and she looked at the things, and she really liked them. And so she said, the woman, "Here, look at this pretty comb." And Snow White, even though she was weary, she was enticed by this comb. And so again, they struck a bargain. And the peddler woman said, "Come here, let me comb your hair properly." So Snow White turned around and let down her hair. And no sooner that the poisoned comb entered into her hair, that it took hold of her, and Snow White fell down as if she were dead. "You are no match for me, Snow White," said the woman, and off she went. In the evening again, the dwarves came by and found Snow White on the floor as if she were dead. And then this time they were stressed out. They said, "What happened?" And they looked and found a comb inside her hair. And no sooner that they plucked it out, that Snow White began to breathe again and opened her eyes and said, "What happened?" "What happened? Is that what we asked?" said the dwarves. And Snow White told them again what happened. "And we told you it was your stepmother again. On no account must you open the door or talk to anybody." Snow White promised again that she wouldn't open the door or talk to anybody. The next day, the queen, confident that she again was able to kill Snow White, went to her looking glass and said, "Looking glass on the wall, tell us who is the fairest of us all." The looking glass said, "You, my queen, are fair, it's true. But Snow White, yonder in the house of the 7 dwarves, is 1,000 times more fair than you." The queen could not contain her rage and her jealousy and her pride. So she went into a place where only she could go in and where she had her witchcraft. There she laced an apple and poisoned the apple. But it was no mere apple, because half of it was poisoned and half of it was fine. And when you looked at that apple, you were so tempted to eat it. And so with that apple, she put it inside her basket. She again painted herself and put herself in such a way that nobody recognized her. And she said, "I will kill Snow White, even if it's the last thing I do." And off she went, over yonder, to the house of the 7 dwarfs. Snow White again received that warning from the dwarves. "Make sure, do not open the door. Your stepmother will stop at nothing to kill you." And Snow White promised that she would not open the door or speak to anybody. And off they went to their chores. And Snow White was then again left alone. The queen, knowing that, came by the house and said, "Apples, delicious apples for sale." Snow White said from the window, "Go away! I am not to speak to anybody or open the door." "Oh, my child, you are here. Wouldn't you like to have an apple?" "No, no, no. I cannot speak to anybody," she said. "Oh, well, but you can look. I will sell my apples in another place, but I would love to give you one." And so the evil queen took out the poisoned apple, and Snow White saw it. And because of the witchcraft, she was tempted. She wanted to take a bite, but she was extremely wary. "Oh, what's wrong, my dear? Are you afraid it's poisoned?" And Snow White did not say anything. "Oh, that's all right. We'll do something. We'll open it in half. I will have one side, and you will have the other, so you will see that it has nothing to worry. There's nothing to worry about." And so the evil queen took a bite from the white side of the delicious apple, the side that did not have any poison. And so Snow White saw that nothing happened. So she took out her hand. She took the apple, and no sooner had she bit into it that she fell down as if she were dead. "Finally, the dwarves will never be able to revive you," said the evil queen, and off she went, leaving Snow White as if she were dead. Later in the evening, the dwarves found Snow White laying there, no breath. They checked again the laces, they combed her hair, they tried to do everything. They washed her, they washed her even with water and wine, but to no avail. They could find nothing. And they assumed that finally she was killed. She was dead. The queen, running back to her castle, went immediately to her looking glass and said, "Looking glass upon the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror finally said, "You, my queen, are the fairest of them all." And her jealous heart was finally settled, as a envious and jealous heart could be. Back at the house of the dwarves, Snow White was there laid, and the dwarves were so sad. They were grieving for her, but they couldn't possibly put her under the dark earth, they said, for her cheeks were still rosy, and her hair as black as ebony was shiny, and her skin was white as snow. It's as if she was sleeping. "We can't possibly bury her in the dark earth," they said. So they fashioned her a crystal coffin and put her there. And they engraved her name, Snow White, and that she was a king's daughter. And then they mourned her for 3 whole days. Finally, they took her up to the mountain and laid her there so that everyone can see her beauty. And even the animals came. One was an owl, the other was a raven, and finally a dove. Years later, who was coming by the forest but a king's son, a prince? And he was so weary that he found the dwarf's house and was going to stay there, but finally he went by and he saw Snow White's coffin. And when he found her, he couldn't believe his eyes, and his heart was so moved, for she was so beautiful still. Her cheeks were rosy, her hair black as ebony, her lips as red as blood, and her skin as white as snow. That he fell in love with her immediately and asked the dwarves, "Please, give her to me." The dwarves said, "No, we cannot give it to you." Again, the prince said, "I will give you anything that you want, all the gold in the world. Just please allow me to take Snow White, for I cannot bear to not see her. I will cherish her as much as one can." The dwarves said that they could not sell her. They could not give her away for any gold in the world, but they saw how honest the prince was and how he actually would cherish her. So they decided to give her to him. The prince ordered his servants to go and to pick up Snow White and to take her back to his castle. So they did. They put her on their shoulders and they started walking. But then at one point they started to stumble on bushes nearby. And with that movement, Snow White shook. And with the shook, when she was shaken, the apple was dislodged from her throat. And she immediately woke up. And she put off the lid, and everybody was astounded. "What happened? Where am I?" she said. And the prince, astounded and very, very happily surprised that Snow White was actually alive, went up to her and said, "You are with me. Snow White, please, I am a king's son, and I would have anything, I would give everything to be with you. Come with me to my father's castle. You will be my queen," he said. And Snow White, looking at his honest eyes, was kind and said yes. And so off she went. And she became the most beautiful bride. And after a few days, they were married. And who was invited to this wedding but the stepmother? When she received the invitation, she went to her looking glass and said, "Looking glass upon the wall," as you know, she wanted to be confident. "Looking glass upon the wall, who is the fairest of us all?" "You, my queen, are fair, is true. But over yonder, in the new queen, is 1,000 times more fairer than you." The queen was shocked, but she could not go to the wedding. She almost decided to not go, but she had to see who this new queen was and why she was more beautiful than her. So off she went, and when she entered the castle, she recognized Snow White, and her heart was filled with rage and terror, for she knew that Snow White had probably told everything that had happened to her new husband. And that was what happened. For when she went inside, there were a pair of hot iron shoes, and she was obligated to put her feet into those shoes and dance. And so she did. She danced in those hot iron shoes until she fell dead. And that is the story of Snow White. Well, I hope you guys liked the real story of Snow White. As you can see, it was viewer discretion advised because, yes, we do have some cannibalism in the story, which I was very much surprised when I read that. But before all, thank you so much. Thank you very much. As you know, as artists, we like to receive, the applause, and I bow to you. Thank you very much. So yeah, it was a very, very impressive story. We have the innocence of a child because Snow White was a child. She was 7 years old when the queen, decided to kill her and take her lungs and liver and have it for a snack, apparently. And and later on, well, the innocence of a child, when people say don't open the doors and she does, kind of like that. But very interesting story. It was collected in 1812, and for everybody to know, there are different versions of this tale. So back in 1812, I have investigated, I've read that actually it was not Snow White's stepmother, but actually her mother who wanted Snow White dead. So that later on in 1857, when they re-edited the version of Snow White, the Brothers Grimm, they changed it from the mother to the stepmother, and that's just something that has happened before. I know that also the same thing happened with the story of Hansel and Gretel, that it was the parents who, the mother who wanted to get rid of the two little kids, and then later on they changed it to the stepmother. So, and afterwards, there is another version, a later on version, in which Snow White, the stepmother, does not ask for the lung and livers, but asks for the heart, which is the story that we know. And if you look into the internet, you will hear people reading the story. You will find out that they say the heart of Snow White and not the liver and lungs. I told the 1857 version, in which she asks for those two items, those two organs. I know it's kind of gross. But with regards to the heart, we have the cannibalism, which is the queen does eat, Snow White's heart. And some people say that it was because it would grant her immortality. That specifically, I can't really say 100% that it is true. But yeah, it's not your your typical cute little tale. It's a very, very dark tale, actually. So that being said, afterwards, when I was investigating this story, I found that there are other versions. There is a Celtic version called Silver Tree and Gold Tree, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to check again. In which definitely they give the Aztecs a hard time. It's true. It's true. Well, the thing is that the Aztecs did do their sacrifices while the people were still alive. So that was kind of horrible. And yes, hello, Polly. Thank you so much for coming. And I know I saw the Scuttlebutt podcast. So awesome. Thank you so much for coming. So yeah. it was pretty gruesome, actually. These tales are not, you know, now they would like they're not, we would say they were not fit for kids, but I am of the version that you know, I think kids, we we want to protect them, but sometimes we say, you know what, kids can handle a few things um that we would be surprised of. So so I mean, these are classic tales. They give us, they were collected for a reason. And so, but back to the Celtic tale, I did read the story of the Celtic version of Snow White, and it's kind of interesting because here, again, we have Silver Tree and Gold Tree, so it's like the Queen and Snow White. The Queen is jealous of Snow White, tries to kill her several times, but in this case, Snow White does get married to a prince, and again, she is the Queen attempts murder, and she gets to it again. She is able to give, you know, the the poisoned apple, etc., etc. You know, Snow White falls kind of dead. But here's an interesting take on the Celtic version. It's that the prince, who does, you know, fall in love with her, thinks that she is kind of dead. She is very much dead, and he remarries. And then the second wife finds Snow White in another room, and amazingly enough, the second wife, you know, is able, I think, to revive Snow White, or something happens that Snow White is revived. And it's like, she said, well, I mean, you married the prince, I will leave, don't worry about it, I mean, you are the first wife. And Snow White says, no, no, because you also married. And amazingly enough, the prince accepts them as his two wives. So it was like, whoa, okay. And then again, yes, the evil queen has her punishment. I do not remember exactly if she is killed or if she is punished. You know? And in other versions, the punishment of the queen is very, very different. I do know that when there have been translations from German to other languages, the queen, you know, kind of kills herself. Well, more than kills herself, she doesn't commit suicide, but her envy and her, you know, and her jealousy just kind of bursts her heart, you know, and then she dies. Instead of the iron shoes, you know, like the hot iron shoes that she's obligated to put on and then dance until she dies. So there are different versions of the punishment of the queen. So it's very interesting because you know, you have so many variations um, of the classic tale. So yeah, it's not it's not a cute story. So so yeah, it does seem way better than, well, Richard Zegler. I mean, it is a version that they're doing of what Disney did. So I mean, it's up to them, and whether or not you want to watch it, that's up. I mean, it's very up to you. You know, I have people who have just loved, you know, the Little Mermaid, like the Halle Berry, and I'm like, I can't really watch that because it's like, no, you know. But fair enough. I mean, everybody has their own taste, and what I guess what everybody's triggered about is that now it's not about the classic, you know, the love story between, you know, Snow White and the prince, which is what a lot of people, you know, actually like, and that's not a problem. That's not, you know, and they wanted to give like a modern version, oh, like a modern twist, and it's like, well, you don't have to give a modern twist for, you know, for your classic virtues or your classic, you know, the values that they're trying to portray. And they do forget that there are so many versions of Snow White, like the movies. There are movies of Snow White. You have Snow White and the Huntsman. You have, I think, the Evil Queen with, what's her name? With Julia Roberts, I think it is. You know, you have so many, like, you actually have several stories of Snow White out there. You know, this is like another one. So yeah. And Nicole says Snow White's tale is the classic stranger danger story and listening. Yeah, it's true. So It is true, and like all of them, is like even I don't know if you guys have ever heard the real, like the extended. Well, it's not the extended version; it's like the real version of the Little Red Riding Hood. It was not, for little kids. It was actually for teenagers, for young girls, in which they go through, they start to go to get into womanhood, and they find these wolves, and the story is, watch out, don't talk to strangers, not people, not everybody is, nice. So it's like, well, now we know it's like the one wolf, that goes and changes into, the grandmother, etc., but I believe in the original tale, it's three wolves, it's three different people, the three different animals, so three different wolves that, kind of go after, Little Red Riding Hood. So yeah, doing a dance sense. It's interesting that Snow White's father just seems to disappear from the story. It's true, and I tried to find what happened to him, because there's no like, nobody says anything. It's like he doesn't die. Um, there's nothing about him. He just it's just like he's there, with his first wife, and then his first wife dies, and then he remarries, and then he kind of just disappears. You know, kind of like giving us a tale is like, well, maybe he doesn't care, or maybe, he's not important for the story, which is in this case, no, because instead, okay, well, if he's not important to the story, what is important to the story, and what is the message that is trying to give us? So yeah. So all of the Grimm's art tales are darker than. Oh yeah, absolutely. So like I said at the beginning, like what Disney did, and it's absolutely valid what he does. This is my perspective. Remember, everybody has their own points of view, and it's a very, respected. Um, what he did was, he took the original tale and he sugarcoated it. So, for example, in the story of Sleeping Beauty, um, it's not a pretty tale, actually. Sleeping Beauty, and when like the prince actually, marries her and has kids with her while she's like kind of sleeping, like literally, and that's something that it's like, it's kind of like, whoa, that's very gross, and it's actually, when she's asleep, is because she has a splinter in her finger, and one of her kids actually, starts sucking her finger and pulls out, and that's when she wakes up. If you guys look at it, if you guys research the story, it's pretty intense what they did. So, for example, what Disney did was he kind of romanticized it. You could say, he took the tale that of popular lore that was public domain, and he created a medieval version, of a very beautiful. I mean, I grew up with Sleeping Beauty, the Disney version, and it also has a message saying that, love is beautiful, and the love between a man and a wife is very beautiful, and it really makes you like feel like, hey, you know what, we can also find a prince. Someday our prince will come. So so yeah, and this is what happened to the dad, right? He couldn't stand with his new wife, so he wanted a long walk. It's true, or it could be this one here. Maybe the queen kept him quiet with her witchcraft. We don't know. So we don't know. It'd be interesting to find out, well, what other versions have of Snow White. But anyway, thank you so much for coming. It was a long tale without meaning to. I thought it was going to be shorter, definitely longer. Remember that this is when a storyteller tells a story, I don't read my stories, I tell them, so it has a little bit of a zing from my personality. If you go and look at the story, if you actually read the story, and there are online versions of the audio book, you will find that it's probably going to be a lot shorter and a lot more direct. But anyway, remember, thank you so much. Remember to like this video if you haven't subscribed to my channel. If you're new here, and if perhaps today I've earned your subscription, just click down there, click the notification bell if any comes up. I will be doing a live presentation of in Toronto. So if you are in the area, by the end of December. It's a free presentation from the Toronto Public Library. I will be telling the tale of East of the Sun and West of the Moon. If you'd like to hear that tale, it's in one of the videos before that. And if you'd like, just like Tabitha, if you'd like a tale, you'd like to hear a story, leave a comment below and say, you know what, I'd love to hear the real version of this tale. Anyway, that's all I have for today. I'm not the critical drinker, so I will not say go off now. But anyway, thank you so much for coming, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. See yas.